The FBI allegedly may have had informants in the Proud Boys. According to reporting by the New York Times, court papers suggest the FBI possibly had up to 8 informants in the group. The Times notes that the documents came to light following several court filings by defense attorneys for 5 members of the Proud Boys, who are scheduled to go on trial next month for charges related to the Capitol riots.
It's still unclear what the FBI was asking of its informants and how focused they were on the group's activities ahead of January 6th. But court documents suggest that some Proud Boy members were recruited by the FBI before the election to provide information about their adversaries in Antifa. Meanwhile, at Homeland Security meetings this week, Representative Clay Higgins questioned FBI Director Christopher Wray on whether the FBI had any part in causing the January 6th attacks. Let's watch.
Director Wray, does the FBI have confidential human sources? Did the FBI have confidential human sources embedded within the January 6th protesters on January 6th of 2021?
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources. But to the extent that there's a suggestion, for example, that the FBI's confidential human sources or FBI employees in some way instigated or orchestrated January 6th, that's categorically false.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being open?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no. Can you not tell the American people, no, we did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol?
Gentleman's time has expired.
You should not read anything into my decision.
The implication there, I'm not sure it lines up. You know, if there are FBI informants at the Capitol, there were a lot of people at the Capitol. There were videographers, there were reporters, there were looky-loos. There were a lot of people there that weren't necessarily.
I was covering it.
Yeah. You're covering now. There were a lot of people there, so I don't know why there was that dance around that last final point. I don't know what gives them not wanting to concede that point either, but that's fine.
So obviously, there are some Republican Trumpier figures who want to suggest and wanted to suggest from the beginning that this is what happened at January 6th was somehow orchestrated, or there was heavy FBI involvement. They wanted this to happen because it would discredit Trump and the MAGA movement because it was so embarrassing. People have tried out, people who want to find a way to dance around have tried a variety of strategies. One was, there's it's not that bad. There's it's actually left-wing activists and Antifa were doing it. And the one that seems to have stuck or landed the most, in truth, because it's more plausible, is that because there was FBI involvement and they wanted to do something. We have seen, law enforcement malfeasance in some levels based on intelligence reports, Hunter Biden laptop story, etc. And it is absolutely true that the FBI and law enforcement in general have a long and storied history of embedding themselves in extremist groups, like where sometimes at the meeting of the extremist group, like everyone there is undercover FBI or an informant for the FBI or a journalist or like undercover for a human rights
this
organization.
was the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping
which
plot
was 100%. If the closer you look at it, it just was nothing at all like what it appeared. It only went forward because the FBI was paying the chief organizer to continue to organize it. They want. That's the interesting thing. It's not they don't learn about something and then shut it down.
Right.
They learn about it and then have it continue so that then they have evidence to prosecute those people. They're prosecuted. What prosecutors what they do is it comes right up to like inducing you to commit a crime so that they can arrest you for it. And this has happened to Muslim teenagers over and over and over again, where they meet someone online who's like who wants to sell them weapons for some terrorist attack. That person is always an FBI agent. Always.
And yet, unless someone is alleging that Donald Trump himself is an FBI informant, it's really hard to get around the statements that he made that day that are the statements that have been coming under scrutiny.
So all that aside, despite all of that, again, clear that the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, all Patriot Prayer, these kind of right-wing militia groups, in the same way that like the mafia, like if you watch Sopranos, it ends up everyone is at some point or another ends up being an informant for the FBI because law enforcement gets turned on to these activities and then gets you on something and then turns. It just happens over and over again. And also, these are not like the smartest, tend not to be the smartest individuals ever. All of that aside, the attack on the Capitol, based on my witnessing of it,
first-hand account,
was very spontaneous and was not organized or driven by specific individuals. It was a spontaneous riot, got out of hand because the crowd was very hyper, very worked up because of things that Trump had said and other factors, and the people who went in, I think it was a spontaneous outburst and sincere.
Yeah,
and I don't think it was not coordinated enough for specific officials working at the government's behest to have done it. It simply wasn't.
And Donald Trump wasn't some Muslim teen being seduced on the internet. He was someone who was surrounded by advisors who were all begging him not to say the things he did and do the things that he did. Remember, there was reports of, I forget which female Fox News host, was it Greta? One of them calling Donald Trump and begging him, telling him this was not a good look, don't do this.
Everyone told him not to.
He had many opportunities to correct his behavior and chose not to. So if this is an issue that's being raised right now, partly because of Donald Trump's announcement that he's going to run for president in 2024, and this is supposed to be, exculpatory in some way. I'm not sure this is going to land with the people that you need it to land with, but maybe it does start to provide sufficient cover for those who still want to be on the Trump train and are frustrated by the idea that there's the collective commitment by the media, it seems, to go ahead and back DeSantis as a sure bet.
I think the tendency also to be critical, to scrutinize law enforcement and national, it's very interesting. It's very selective these days, depending on who we're talking. There are mainstream people on mainstream or progressive liberal media who are very critical of police when we're talking about Black Floyd marchers, but think the FBI is their best friend.
Even worse, they'll be critical of the FBI if we're talking about the 1960s, but magically, I guess they think it's a good FBI when it's under the Biden administration.
Yeah, so there should be a lot of well-founded criticism of law enforcement. I'm heartened to see that on the Republican side. And again, I'm not naive. What we're learning about the Hunter Biden investigation and some other things look very bad for this organization. I would like to see a wholesale cleaning of house reforms for the FBI, NSA, Homeland Security. I would abolish the TSA. I would wholesale cancel out a lot of these organizations, but I would have done that, 15 years ago as well. And Republicans, when they had power, when Donald Trump was president, didn't do a thing, did not do a single thing to rein in any of these agencies. So it's a little bit of sour grapes now to complain about, how unfair they are. Well, they didn't do anything about the FISA. They only cared about FISA courts when maybe they were looking at Trump, no interest otherwise. You have to be principled, and you have to, want to take away these tools from the government, even when your people are running it.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot more conversations about this now that Republicans have the House and can mount investigations as they will. So we'll be following that story, and we'll have more Rising for you coming up next.